Auburn recruiting not going super well, but it's only June.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's a bonus edition of the show. We're joined by the Ben Taylor of the Auburn Network family of stations. He hosts Auburn Opelika this morning on News Talk WANI. Ben, you've always differed from me in the opinion of when you need to start caring about these recruits. You've been very pro and consistent on, yeah, that's cool that Auburn's getting these guys, but let's sign them and then I'll be excited. Well, the last, week has not been great for Auburn on the recruiting front.
No.
So you bring a different perspective than I do on this. How do you feel about Auburn having like the 72nd ranked class in the 2026 recruiting classes?
I do like to see the number a little higher than, or I guess lower than 72nd. I would like to see that number improved a
That's
bit.
not great. That's not very good.
And I will, but you're right. And I feel even like I was vindicated back during the Jimbo Fisher era at Texas A&M because he he was getting all these 5 stars and they weren't winning ball games. And so I said, that's what I'm talking about. Like, get them signed, get them developed, and then I'll start caring about them. Because how many guys have we ever seen that come in and start right away? I mean, the Tuas of the world are kind of few and far between. You do see some defensive guys that do that. But I've been a big proponent, which Kyle Rush, he always tells me that I'm lying, that I do care about recruiting other than before they sign. But I've said I see all these things and I see these because we don't know the level of high school play that they're doing. You see these stars. But with all that said, and yes, I do stand on the fact that I like to see a name on the dotted line first before we start celebrating, because people celebrate when we get a commit. And I'm like, and then you see what happened with Tootle. He flips and goes to Georgia. It's like, okay.
Devin Carter. Yeah, sure. Right.
Yeah, so there's the wasted celebration. So get them signed. However, 72nd, I think great. I'd kind of like to see that number higher because if it were at least in the 30s or high 20s, then if you close strong, because we're only looking for 16 is basically what we got to fill, something around there, 15, 16 players.
That's the number floating around. It's going to be a smaller class. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like we're looking for 25. So, I mean, I get it. So if you close strong, you could jump into that top 15 if you're in the upper 20s, low 30s. But 72, my theory is being tested this year. And I know that there has been the whole, if they win, it'll take care of itself. I don't know that necessarily is the case. I think that, and listen, you got to get guys in because I think the road's even tougher next year as far as schedule is concerned. So you need some names on the board. But
I do think there's a split between recruiting and like current performance of the roster that gets mixed up. Kyle and I talked about this on the show this week where we talked about, okay, this time a year ago, there was, or maybe fast forward a month and then rewind a year ago. But going into last season, there was so much buzz on the recruiting front where, oh my goodness, they were, getting all of these elite guys. But then I remember having to do a few shows where it's like, okay, hey, just because this momentum is here, this does not impact the season that's about to happen.
Right.
This is almost the opposite. We're like recruiting, not almost, it is the opposite. Recruiting's not going well, but it doesn't mean the roster that we believe in that Auburn has built, like it doesn't make it worse. It doesn't make, Auburn, having a shot to go 8-4 or 9-3 and win more games than it has in the past few seasons. It doesn't change that.
Right.
And so then you even saying like, okay, well, we're assuming that the following year is going to be tougher. That's true. And all recruiting classes are important, but I don't think they're necessarily like tied together in the sense of recruiting is a delayed thing. I mean, there are guys that were in, the class 2 years ago that still aren't going to play a ton this year, but they're going to be important next season. And so it is a thing where like, okay, if Auburn does have a smaller class, they're probably assuming that when it's time for that class to be, a heavy percentage of the roster when it comes to starting, that they're going to hit the portal anyway. And so with that regard, like, I don't think it's catastrophic, but usually recruiting rankings are kind of a marker and a telltale sign of like if a program's trending in a certain direction. And that's my concern.
Yeah. I think it all depends on, a lot of it depends on development too. And we keep hearing that the guys are getting better developed now than what they were. Because you look at the Final Four that we had this past year as far as football was concerned. You got two teams in there that did very well recruiting each and every year. And then you had a couple of teams in there that you never really hear their name in the top 10 whatsoever as far as recruiting is concerned. So it's kind of.
Wait, which ones? So you had Ohio State, Texas.
Yeah. Yes, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Ohio State,
Penn State.
Penn State. Are they a top 10 every year?
I feel like they're up there.
Ohio State is for sure. Ohio State is always up there. But Ohio State controls the state of Ohio and basically Indiana as well. And so that's one reason they're up there.
Yeah.
You got Penn State up there in the top 10? James Franklin?
Well, so they were 15th last year.
Yeah.
They were 15th the year before. Then we'll go.
That's their watermark.
We'll look at 23 and then we'll be done. 14th. So
that's their watermark. 15, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So, but it's that 3-year process like you're talking about where you got to get them in, you got to get them developed, you got to keep them now with the portal. But I also feel like recruiting each and every year, it's like a domino effect. Like Penn State, at least they're 15 every year. There's that consistency. You know what you got. You know what you're going to be playing with. You know what you're going to be playing with 3 years down the road because you're the number 15 ranked class 3 years in a row. So Same thing goes as far as like Auburn is concerned. I think that we've seen what we've done the last 2 years. We're kind of fully expecting that domino to continue to fall and for us to have that same this year, and we're not getting it right now. Now, I don't know. You and I were talking beforehand. I don't know if we're going to flip any last minute. As I mentioned just a minute ago, you hear people say, well, you win ball games and you'll start flipping people. I don't know that that's the case because,
I think you'll flip some, but to act like we're going to get all these guys back. And just to put a bow in the Penn State thing, they were 6th in 2022, and that was a big part of that's when they got Drew Aller, their quarterback, Nick Singleton, one of the best running back, and then also Abdul Carter was in that class. So, I mean,
that's
a
3 to 4 year window that's that 3 to 4 window that works itself out. Mm-hmm. And so I still maintain get the dotted line, but everybody that assumes the whole flip thing, like we're not going to flip 10 players. I'm sorry. I just don't think that's going to happen. Not the ones that have already flipped away from Auburn. I don't know that we're going to flip 10 of them back to Auburn.
I agree with that. With that. Are there certain guys where it would make more sense than others? Like, I think it would make more sense to flip Marquez Daniel from Florida to Auburn, which, to your credit, he was never committed to Auburn. So I think it would make sense to flip Devin Carter, who was obviously committed to Auburn, back to FSU to flip him back. I think that one would make sense. Poodle, I don't think makes sense. They lost J. Mike. Like, I don't think that one makes sense. They're going to miss out on C.D. Morgan. Like, I don't think that one makes sense. But will you get some guys if you prove it on the field? Sure. I think so. I don't know if I necessarily – I think the win it and it'll take care of itself argument, I don't think it's quite calibrated. I want to talk about what I mean by that in just a second right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook. Can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel, Ben Taylor?
Nope, not at all.
Nope. Despite all the craziness, like I said, it's not related as far as what's happening on the recruiting front. FanDuel still has Auburn winning 7.5 as their win total. So if you feel like Auburn is going to win it and everything's going to take care of itself, head over to FanDuel, take the over on that. And they've also
jump on that over. Jump on the over right now.
Is that where you're at?
Yeah. I think that line by the time the season starts jumped up to 8 to 8.5.
That'd be crazy. That'd be a lot of money coming in. So I mean, it depends on the day. Right now, I would bet the over as well. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Ben Taylor, the man over at the Auburn Network family of stations. People know him. People love him. The winning, it'll take care of itself. I agree that winning will fix pretty much everything. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Is it going to make, if Auburn, let's say Auburn has a great season, they go 9-3. They're into the playoff discussion in November, which is really like all we can ask for. That'd be incredible. We'd all be stoked if that were to happen.
I would be shocked.
You'd be shocked if that happened?
Yeah.
Okay. You just said you're screaming pound the over. You'd be shocked?
That's just 8 right now.
Okay.
If it's 8, you're not in the playoff. But 9, you're in the playoff discussion. I'd be shocked.
Do you have Auburn beating Bama?
No.
Okay. So you've got Auburn in the playoff discussion then until they play Bama, and they would lose. Yeah. So they're in the playoff discussion in November. So you wouldn't be shocked. You would not be shocked. Or you're lying to yourself.
I'm lying to myself.
That's fine. That's great.
I'm trying to soften the blow.
That's good. I'm fine with it.
I'm just setting myself up for disappointment, man.
Yeah, no, I'm ready to get hurt again. The whole winning and take care of itself stuff. I do think obviously winning it will help with a few recruits this year. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But is it okay? Auburn's going to get back into like a top 5 class if they go 9-3 this year. I don't think so. But what I do think it does is it builds credibility for the next class. That is my assumption of what would happen if Auburn does, turn the corner and win 8 or 9 or more games. I think it obviously would help this class to some extent, but I don't think you're going to have the same kind of ranked class this year as you would in previous seasons. And some of that also, Ben, is if the number that's floating around is they're going to take 16 guys in this class. You're not going to have the numbers to have a highly ranked class anyway. Nope. So I do think there is some context that matters when having this discussion.
No, I was hoping for like top 20, but now we're sitting at 72. I don't know if that's even feasible at this point. We shall see. I'll take it a step further than just the recruits. I think winning on the field probably helps more with the portal than it does as far as flipping a recruit, because people like to get if they're not getting some time somewhere and they want to come play on a team that's going to be successful, then that's what they'll do. You see players doing that all the time, want to transfer into the Georgias or want to transfer into the Alabamas. And so, and you can be selective when you win it on the field. You can be selective in what you bring in. Like we saw this past year where they were bringing in more depth pieces than they were starting pieces as opposed to previous years. So Again, I think there's a misnomer out there. Everybody thinks as soon as you win, let's just say, Zach, let's just boog a little bit and say, and I had this discussion with Kyle, let's say we're 5-0 going into Georgia.
Okay.
I still don't know how many guys you flip during that 5-win span. And then,
well, the issue with the argument for a lot of these guys of if you win it, you'll flip some of these guys is the teams that they flip to, or they just flat out they beat you in the initial recruitment for the initial commitment. Shadarius Tootle, Sadarian Morgan, these guys, they're committing to places that are probably going to win 10 games this year.
Right.
The ones where I'm like, okay, I think that argument holds heavier weight is the ones that commit to Florida or flip to FSU, where things could totally fall apart there. And then I think it changes the context of that conversation when the coaches do call them to try to get them to flip.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is dependent on school. I mean, if somebody flips from us to Bama or flips from us to Georgia or us to even like LSU, because I think LSU could possibly have a decent year.
Nussmeier. I agree.
Yeah, so I think that we got a less chance to flip them back. But yeah, if they're flipping because they want to stay closer to home, and then they realize that's not all it was cracked up to be, then we could possibly get them back. But it'll be interesting to see if that scenario plays itself out, especially if they beat Georgia under the lights. If that helps with as far as any recruits are concerned.
Yeah.
But everybody that's putting all their eggs in that basket of, hey, if you can get 8 to 9 wins, these guys will flip back. Also remember that December is the signing period. Like, I know there's one in February, but we've signed maybe a total of 5 kids in the last 2 years in February, something like that.
I think it was one each class. I think.
Yeah.
I think the only one we signed earlier this year was Omar, and he reclassified.
Yeah, and he reclassified to do so. Otherwise, we'd have zeroed out. So, so the winning's got to take place quick in order to get the flip. Just because I think that the days now with portal and where we used to see the guy be on television on the very last day of signing day, putting on a hat that none of us really thought was. That doesn't happen. Everybody acts like that happens all the time. There's only a few that do that countrywide whenever you see those things.
Yeah, because so much of that is, I mean, at this point, like, you've got contracts in place now.
Yeah. So it's a different, as far as the flipping part, it's a different world now than what it was. So again, you got it in the title. It's only June. I'm not freaking out yet, but I will say, a month and a half from now, if we're still sitting at 72, I'm probably getting a little nervous.
Sure. And I do think, I think in a week, Auburn will move up, just to be clear. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Ben Taylor, what?
How far up? 72.
How far up?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to do the class calculator thing. I think they get 1 or 2 guys. So they probably move up to what, 50-ish? I'm not sure.
Well, and go back to what we just talked about just a minute ago. Like, with us only signing 16, is it even a top 10 class attainable?
Top 10?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the smaller class thing is going to hurt us for sure.
Yeah, I do too.
So, like, you've got to look at quality of player, not necessarily like the ranking, because like the deck is stacked against you. So much of it is volume.
Yeah.
But no, there are a few guys that I think are interesting.
I was asked this question where they while you're looking, I was asked this question where they said, where would you be happiest? And I said, happiest is probably finishing somewhere between 12 and 17 as far as having a top 20 class. So I just don't see.
I don't think that's a crazy thing to assume.
I just don't see. I mean, that gives me a 5-place window there, 12 to 17. I think that's a decent class.
Yeah. Zaire, Wilkes, Rankins, Parks, and then he goes by Goon, the linebacker from Florida. Yeah. Like, if you get all of those guys, like, all right, those are all good players. Those are all good players that could start at some point in their college career in the SEC. So you just need some momentum. They really need to get some momentum going. And I think any of those guys would help that process start to begin. So we'll see what happens. Ben Taylor, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
AUnetwork.com is where you find me. Click on the WANI logo. We do sports each and every morning, 7:05 a.m., like Locked On Wednesdays, Top Button Tuesdays with the Charlie 5/Kyle Rush, Double D Mondays with our big man Daryl Depprich, who went on a rant about the baseball this past Monday. So if you want to see the Dap rants other than Twitter, you can catch me there at AUnetwork.com and click on the WANI logo.
Please like the video. Please subscribe. And if you're tuned in on audio, please leave us a 5-star review. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.